sounds like my knees. So many of our conference people are going into that conference coma thing, needing a little bit of downtime before the party tonight, right? I'll just give it a couple minutes. I'm seeing lots of people still coming in through the back. Good afternoon, everyone. Oh, look at all those folks clustered at the back. They always put the troublemakers in the back, you know. I've got my eye on you. Yep. So we are going to talk about mental health in the workplace and compassion fatigue. And something that I don't think has been addressed enough in the service dog world. Folks are dog trainers for a reason, usually because they don't do people that well. So this will be an interesting exploration, and I see lots of heads nod with this. So a little introduction to who I am. I am currently the Client Service Coordinator with National Service Dogs. And I'd like to give a little shout out to our Executive Director, Danielle Forbes, also known as Danny. So Danny was implemental in putting the very first assistance dog, the autism program together. 26 years now, correct, Danny? 27? 23. Oh, she's not that old. So, and hearing all the different programs that are out there for autism now and the different ways that you're approaching it, it's beautiful. So we offer service dogs for both autism and PTSD for veterans and first responders. I know there's been a lot of focus just on the veterans here, but first responders. And then we have a CAI program that includes courthouse dogs, dogs in colleges, at counseling offices. We have just started a real focus on putting CAIs into first responder stations to be proactive rather than reactive. So they are going into the CIS debriefings after major incidents, and the dogs are invited in. He has his own web page, and they've got their own jackets with their name and officer this and fireman that. But it's making a real difference. I'm also a master trainer of applied suicide intervention skills trainer and mental health first aid. And that's how I first met Danny and the team at National Service Dogs, because part of the standards that are being rolled out around working with PTSD clients is that your staff need to be trained in these areas. They need to know how to address the questions, the concerns, to know what the signs are, and then also how to protect themselves from becoming one of the statistics of compassion fatigue or burnout. So I'm a private trainer working with the Mental Health Commission of Canada, and we have a psychological standard. So it's mental health in the workplace, psychological standard, and it is now being implemented in Europe as well. And they basically did a cut and paste, and it will become legislation. So this is going to affect anybody in Canada or the EU, and we'll see about other countries whether that will come forward. But it puts an ownership on the organizations to be proactive, to be aware, and to know what is going on with their staff, and to have pieces in place like debriefing policies and procedures, communication procedures, avenues for debriefing that are professional outside of the organization as well, so that your staff are not experiencing a psychiatric injury in the workplace. And there have been lawsuits in the hundreds of thousands of dollars First big one came out of New York, not out of Canada, and that prompted Canada looking at it on a deeper level. You can find that information online under the Canadian Standards Association. You can copy and paste and look at some of the suggestions of what you can do in your workplace, and it's great. They want to make it work globally. I also offer retreats in Ireland and Jamaica. So make it if I have to come over there. Can we do a conference in the castle in Ireland next? So why the mental health training? You're all here. I love it, even post-lunch. But we know that every single one of our clients, no matter what their disability is, when they are coming into service, they are dealing with a mental health issue in addition to their diagnosis. You're not living with vision impairment without some degree of anxiety. There may be depression with that. Anxiety and depression are cousins. They like to hang out with each other. You are dealing with PTSD. Okay, so you have a diagnosis on the DSM. That's wonderful. That's accessing getting a service dog, but there are a whole myriad of other things that they're dealing with as well. The only suicide that we've had in our organization has been the parent of a child with autism, not our PTSD client. Caregiver burnout is very real, and almost without exception, every time that I've asked a parent, so how are you doing? I get this like, oh, you're asking about me, and sometimes tears. There is nobody there for me, I'm feeling overwhelmed, all those pieces. Learning the steps of appropriate support is essential. We are not going to be therapists. Even with my mental health and counseling background, I am not about to counsel any of our clients. They need to have their own network and support network. I am here to remind and reinforce that they need to go back and utilize the bigger network that they have. Because we have such a personal relationship, we go into their home, we acknowledge them on different levels. They open up in a completely different way than they would in an office with a desk in between. And we need to acknowledge that that line is difficult for a lot of our staff. Our staff come in with big, big hearts. The trainers go out to do follow-ups, to support. They give them their personal Facebook connection. They have dinner with them. Because they're getting roped in, and our clients will take as much as you give. They're hungry for support. For professionalism, we need to have a line, and that includes the litigation component, but also for their own personal well-being. So how do we protect ourselves? And I'll be going through this. So the first signs of a mental health concern, I've got the laundry list up there, but things like depression, it's not just about being sad, it physically hurts. So if you're noticing that in your body you have more aches and pains than usual, that might be a sign, oh, I need to check in with myself and make sure that I've got some balance, some life-work balance going on here. How many of us by Friday, our shoulders are in our ears? I come up behind a staff member and put my hand, I'm a toucher. I put my hand on their shoulder and they're like, oh, that feels good. And I give them a little, oh my God, this is like massaging a door. A little indication that there's a little bit of tension going on there. Headaches. Think about our kidlets. The very first thing that they usually say when they're stressed out is, my tummy hurts. Paying attention to all these signs, including cognitive difficulty, not being able to remember things, getting things backwards. I'm horrible with people names, but I know the dog names, so I know I'm okay. But the cognitive issues do come into play. I talk about cognitive pruning. I've only got so much in my head that I can handle. I need to dump that or write it down, and that becomes an issue at a certain point. And then, of course, there's the cranky factor. Somebody was bubbly and positive when they first came into work, and now they're meet, meet, meet. We all have meet days, but when it's a continuous cranky, everything's wrong, I'm feeling overwhelmed, this isn't right, that isn't right, you know something else is going on here. This is a change in personality from the person that you hired. So some of those symptoms of depression. So the mood changes, sadness, irritability, and despair. So the irritability piece, you may not think of that as depression, where it's sharp answers, low, like really short fuse. When they came into work, they had a really high frustration tolerance level. They're now down here, they can only cope with so much, and then they start, stomping through and throwing things on the ground and just being cranky. So absenteeism, presenteeism. Presenteeism is you got the earth suit showing up at work, but that's all you've got for the day. They're not participating, they're barely going through the motions, and you've got an issue. So, but I showed up for work. I'm not sick, but they're not really there. Absenteeism rates, watching that flow in a person's chart when you're doing reviews. Ideally, you're doing reviews with your staff. If they're taking off time on a regular basis, what's going on? Is there a physiological or a psychological issue going on there? And while I said that we're not counselors, we do need to dig deeper when it comes to our staff because we have responsibilities. How much does it cost you when you lose staff? So I'm hearing from a few of the organizations that, we've lost a number of staff recently and we have to cut production and actually put dogs out to other organizations so they're going to be utilized. So what's going on? It becomes a contagion within the organization too, that it's much easier to drop down than to rise above the cranky factor, the blaming, the presenteeism where work isn't really getting done. So the cousin to depression, of course, is the anxiety piece. So looking at some behaviors that may occur. The number of trainers that I've met over the years that self-identify as living with mental health conditions and that their choice to become a dog trainer is because they can spend so much time with the dog and all the therapeutic avenues of working with the dog. But if they start becoming overwhelmed, you can witness in real time an anxiety attack. Has anyone here ever supported a person dealing with an anxiety attack? So about half of you. That speaks a lot to what's going on out there, whether it's yourself or somebody that you know or some stranger out there. It has all the hallmark signs of a heart attack. And so with due diligence, the same as with first aid, you do not assume that it is only an anxiety attack. You need to ensure that you are saying, we need to get you to a doctor to do a check-in. Can we take you down to the hospital? Depending upon what country you're in, that can be an expensive venture or not. But it needs to be looked at. And at the very least, a follow-up with their family doctor, if they have one, or a walk-in clinic, to get some baseline, blood pressure, some blood work, et cetera, what else is going on. Because it may not be a mental health condition, it may be a physical health condition as well. So the chronic physical complaints, pay attention to that. If a staff member came in physically strong and now there's aches and pains for no apparent reason, like no injury, etc., there may be something else going on. The body talks to you, and sometimes it yells at you. And I'm wondering how many people are going to be leaving here and ending up with a cold just because of the exhaustive long days of fun and information input. Not just because we're all hugging each other too. I've been hugged so much at this conference. It's lovely. But pay attention to those pieces. And again, those frustration tolerance levels. So not all react the same. I have a white cat that would totally just walk by all those shepherds without blinking an eye. He is just so confident. And yet my other cat, no way, he'd be hiding upstairs underneath the bed if there was even essence of a new dog in the house, which Mommy brings home an awful lot of new dogs into the house. Oh, great, they're multiplying, I'm sure goes through his mind every time I come home with 2 or 3 dogs if we have an ice storm like last winter. So just because you can manage something does not mean that somebody else manages it the same way. The expectations that they should, we need to step back and go, everybody has their own triggers and their own level of tolerance. Most of us here know about the symptoms of PTSD, right? Now, PTSD, we're talking primarily here about veterans and first responders, but there are a number of new cases coming up and a lot of diagnoses around PTSD according to workplace environments. And that can also end up with lawsuits. So PTSD in the workplace can come from bullying, can come from vicarious trauma, a number of other things. So when we're going in to do an interview into a home, and we don't know the situation that we're going into other than because we cover all of Canada, that's a lot of real estate. We probably have the biggest catchment area of any of the organizations that are sitting here. And so we initiate with a telephone call. I've now incorporated Skype calls so that then we get the face-to-face, but then going into a situation, I go through a safety checklist to make sure that I'm safe before going in and doing a quick scan when you go into a household as well. So everything from a PTSD client may have another dog that they've perhaps not disclosed, and this other dog is there for protection. Am I safe when I go in there? There may be other hazards that hadn't been spoken of before. They may have an open gun if you're in the States sitting out. So there's lots of things that you need to be aware of as soon as you step in the door, which can raise the anxiety in a staff member who has no prior training on how to deal with stressful situations in a person's home. And quite often, we are going in by ourselves and on the other side of the country. And we don't have a quick emergency other than 911 to call if a situation occurs. So prior to doing any face-to-face interview, we now have an amazing new tool. So Christine Anderson, she is a part of our network, and I met her at a Wounded Warriors Symposium in just outside Toronto, and she has put together this new prescriber guideline that is available on our website. So that's nsd.on.ca, and it's a link to this prescriber guideline. So this is going to be a great tool. They need to go into their mental health care practitioner to look at their whole life, not just the 2 lines of this person requires the assistance of this service dog in order to help mitigate their condition. Currently, that's the only thing that you need in Canada, and there isn't due diligence at the front end. The doctor's like, yay, you got a fluffy pet, that's awesome, let's go for it, and they'll sign off this letter. So that includes also emotional support animals. But when it comes to the PTSD, because it's on the DSM, needing to have that formal diagnosis, but also looking at life skills, lifestyle, and who their support network is. And it's also helping them in looking at forward thinking. So when we notice someone, whether it is a client or a staff person, when they're struggling, how do you approach that? This was not a part of your training, perhaps. A lot of even HR people have not gone through mental health training until more recently because of the push in Canada. But outside, I mean, we have the globe sitting here. And how do you have that discussion without crossing boundaries, without becoming a therapist? So the first thing is treating every single person with dignity and respect. Everyone has a story. Most of us have some level of pain that we've experienced in our life, whether it's the loss of a loved one, other stories that go on in your life, traumatic events. And so we need to just come in with respectful presence. So learn how to ask for help. So they need to be asked directly because they may not know how to ask, and you need to be preemptive sometimes. Simple things like, I'm noticing that you're not as engaged in volunteer events as you used to be. When this person first started, they would be coming out with great ideas, they wanted to be involved in everything, and you're seeing less and less participation in their job and the things that used to bring them joy. They used to love going to the doggy dip, and they're not present at that doggy dip. We just did that last week where they shut down the pools and they let the dogs go in for the last dip of the year as a fundraiser. So approaching the situation, remaining calm, talking to them. They may be behaving erratically, like they may have reached critical mass. You haven't been privy to seeing them, but all of a sudden there's some behaviors in the office. Assessing your own safety, first and foremost, same as first aid. Ideally, everybody here has their first aid tickets. And listening non-judgmentally. Listening is not counseling. Sometimes people just need to get the information out, for someone to hold space for them, actually take the time in privacy and hold space for them to talk. And then, because you've done your research beforehand, you know what supports are in your community for your staff person or in the community that the person lives in, get them some support options. So there's helplines there. I'm not sure how many of you are able to afford benefits for your staff where an EAP, an Employee Assistance Program, is in place. Most EAPs have avenues of just picking up a phone and doing some initial telephone conversation. But they need to know that they've been heard, and then some degree of action that is going to take them into helping the current situation. There are also, with the psychological standards, avenues for a checklist if you're really concerned about a person remaining at work at that time, that they need to get clearance from their doctor, not as a punitive measure. This is, I'm concerned. It may be physical, it may be psychological. We need to know and to go through this checklist of different things to make sure that you're well enough to come back. Pushing yourself is not the answer. Sometimes you need to take that break, catch your breath, and move on. So being aware of our body language, we're pretty tuned in here as working with dogs, right? We're more intuitive than the average person. We train the dogs to watch for subtle cues in a person living with PTSD, whatever their tells are. Also, agitation with children. The dog needs to be able to help mitigate some of that. So we need to be sensitive to the dog and sensitive to the people. So we've got that volume turned up a bit. I put on my FM voice. It works. And you slow down your speech because people may be talking really, really fast and telling you the story and this is what's going on. Oh my God, I'm feeling overwhelmed. They will match you because we are monkeys. They will match you in the rhythm and cadence of your voice. It also helps you to gather your thoughts as you're going, oh my God, what do I do? Assuming that non-threatening posture, if they're sitting and it's safe for you to sit down beside them. Have any of you taken communications workshops? Okay, so a couple of you. How about nonviolent crisis intervention workshops? More of you. Okay, so this side, you get the points here. We got to work on this side here. I'm going to have you do a sing-song later. So the nonviolent crisis intervention training teaches you when it's safe, what distance you're supposed to be, exit strategy out of a door, all those pieces. Don't get yourself trapped in a situation because things can escalate very quickly. And you may not realize if a person is actually experiencing a psychotic episode either. A psychotic episode does not mean that they're going to attack you, but it can be dangerous. They could throw a chair and you're in the way. Or you've moved in, like I do with a baseball, I move this way to catch it and actually end up getting bonked in the head. So those pieces are very important, including you controlling your own anxiety, because this is a stressful situation. We're not therapists. We're not dealing with this on a day-to-day basis. Non-judgmental listening. That's my buddy Chartwell. And he's a great listener and a super-duper kisser. Now, we've incorporated this new CAI program where the dog is embedded with the firefighters in Mississauga. Anybody who's not from Mississauga, try pronouncing that, yeah. And he goes into the debriefings. So he is a great listener, not Chartwell, but their dog, Ajax, going into the debriefings, and it actually encourages people to talk, because there is a different element to be talking to. They'll be petting the dog, their blood pressure is lowered, their serotonin and dopamine is actually rises when you see a dog and you're a dog person, you get that little whoo. And the non-judgmental listening. Now we need to step in and just let people tell their story. No judgment. Things are messy. People are really, really messy. So being present. Now I have worked all over Canada. I worked up in a place called Haida-Gwaii. Does anybody here know where Haida-Gwaii is? Okay, so I was living without hydro and running water. I could see Alaska from my cabin, and it's a 7-hour ferry ride there. Just a little bit remote. And I had an Indigenous elder working with me, and she's like, Thea, you know your stuff. You came in with your briefcase, you know your stuff, but you do not know how to listen. And I was responding right away, almost over top of her. Exactly that. Truly listening is leaving the space after a person has told their story just to make sure that they're finished. Just sit with the information that they've given and then respond. Never making promises you can't keep. I'll be there, whatever it is that, I'll go with you to appointments, whether this is client or staff. I've got my cell phone on. You can text me any time of the day. This is not your job. You are not the first point of contact. You are there to give them ideas on where to go to. Do not give them advice. You know what's going to happen is if they take your advice and it goes sideways, who are they going to blame? And they'll never trust you again. And it takes away their power. And most people know what it is that they need. Can you all try and make a promise to look at the resources in your area for mental health supports, both for your clients and your staff? Because you need to be referring out. So interacting supportively, treating people with respect, no matter where they're coming from at that point in time. You may not relate at all to their story. You may be really angry with their projecting all their poison, their use of foul language, the volume that they're speaking, and some of the choices that they've made. Hold that. It's not for you to comment on. calm, clear, direct, and brief, and be consistent and predictable with your limits that you can support them in and your expectations. So your expectations with staff, if they've needed to blow off steam, and here's a good piece of information. If somebody is really, they have lost it, and they're coming from a really primal place, it usually only lasts 20 minutes, and then they burn all that energy out, and then they're able to talk. Having a little, calming the lights down, or quieter conversation, or can I get you a glass of water? Giving them opportunities to catch their breath. I'm here. But if they can't, it's usually only a 20-minute phase. Keeping a respectful distance, but also that comes into play around your own personal safety again. It's a special hearing aid. It filters out criticism and amplifies compliments. Wouldn't that be awesome? So don't assume that their behavior is always going to stay like this. Like something's happened, they're broken now, that's it. No one is broken. We're human beings, we're incredibly resilient, and sometimes we just fall apart, and we need somebody to help us put things back together again and start walking forward. Don't ask the private questions. Actually, the fewer questions, the better. Open-ended questions always, rather than the yes-no answers. And for most of us, I know for myself included, I go to the ha-ha factor when I'm really anxious about something. I start cracking jokes. Again, the respect piece, we cannot negate that this person's pain is real. It diminishes what they're telling us by making light of it. This is not about our comfort, and try and refrain from doing any joking around. The great emotional support animal. Don't tell me you're okay. You're not okay. I can smell the hurt inside of you. Don't walk away. Talk to me. So beware of the emotional support dog. How to help yourself and others. I'm not going to ask for a show of hands, but have you ever gotten to the point where I need to get help? I pushed myself too much. I got all the signs that lady at the conference said. I got the check. Maybe it's time I need to go and do a check-in. But that's not me. I'm strong. This is what I signed up for. Like every first responder, every veteran, this is what I signed up for. You may have heard 50 stories in the last week of pain and suffering from our clients. Where do you put that? How do you deal with that? What are you doing to take care of yourself? So seeking help from a mental health professional is not a sign of weakness. It's a sign of true strength and doing what you need to do to stay strong, to stay in the industry. We don't want to lose valuable people. Draw on the support of family and close friends. But if you're like, I haven't checked in with my friends for a while because I've been too busy with work. Okay, so there's another check mark on the list. And check-ins with somebody you trust, be it in the organization or outside. Somebody who will not say what it is that you want to hear, but will give you the truth. Ask them, have I changed, behaviors? I'm feeling not myself. Can you give me some feedback? Ideally, they're going to tell you truth in a loving, respectful way as well. So talking to somebody who's been there, it's almost, hearing different stories from different groups here. It would be great to have an online forum of support for each other, to have this kind of kumbaya that we've had at the conference of sharing information, but to be able to support each other and collectively strategize on dealing with certain stressors in our industry, be it legislative or client-based. What do I do? Checking in with somebody, something as simple as doing a 10-minute walk with a dog, if that what really feels good, or without a dog, if you need to just not feel like you're working at the moment. But it literally changes your brain chemistry. Go for a 10-minute walk. Be alone. If you can make it into 20, that's awesome. We're fortunate that we've got 7 acres to walk on. So I've had a tough phone call, and I'm out the door with my dogs and going for a little stomp down the laneway, and then come back at a nice leisurely pace. Mindfulness activities, or cuddle puddles with puppies, if you happen to have puppies in the house. When I'm on tough calls, I do the adult coloring books. Brings me into the moment. I'm not leaving myself, because I have struggled over the years. I have burned out in social services and mental health position before, and I know the signs, and I don't want to go back there. So I implement as much as I can into my daily life and know when my limit is my limit. And that's tough for us. We're helpers. We push ourselves a little bit beyond our limit on a regular basis. Having a sense of purpose and belonging. We all need to feel like we belong. So this is my beautiful boy, Finnegan, and 2 of our pupperoos. And Finnegan loves being the nanny. And those 2 puppies came over to my place. They were rocking and rolling, playing. And you'll see a later picture after the rocking and rolling. We can be physically starved for hugs and touch. We get it from our dogs. If you have children, you can get it from your children or your spouse. But so often we feel like we're giving it. When was the last time you received? Getting a massage and getting rid of some of that tension in your body. Scheduling more fun. My coworkers know that if I haven't made somebody in the house laugh that day, that my job is not done. I even have silly hat days. Can I get everybody to stand up right now? The post-lunch slump that's going on. North American driving techniques in certain regions are pretty stressful and anxiety-provoking. So road rage, etc. This is what I've incorporated even in doing a drive. Now, if you're breathing in through your nose, it triggers a different part of your brain than if you breathe in through your mouth. So breathing in through your nose actually calms your system. And then when you breathe out through your mouth, you're exhaling all sorts of toxins. It's the quickest go-to to get rid of anxiety. So we're only going to do this 3 times. And imagine as you're breathing in deeply through your nose that you're blowing up a balloon as big as you can. So I will do the counting for you. So breathe in through your nose for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Out through your mouth, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. In through your nose, 3, 4, 5. Out through your mouth, 3, 4, 5, 6. In through your nose, 2, 3, 4, 5. Out through your mouth, 3, 4, 5, 6. Feel a little lightheaded? Doing any more than 5, you feel drunk. So no more than 5, that's the prescription here. But it's a quick go-to if you know you're going into an anxious position, and you can go into a sitting position again if you'd like, or remain standing. Quite often at meetings and conferences, I'm the one that's leaning up against the wall doing like crazy yoga moves in order to stay alert. So tools that are at the ready for immediate relief are important. Prepare yourself to wait. We had a great discussion at lunchtime about the electronic leashes that we have, our cell phones, our friends. So every time that cell phone goes off, you get a little hit of adrenaline. You get adrenaline fatigue if that goes on too much. After the adrenaline fatigue, it can move into your thyroid and dealing with depression and other regulatory issues, moves into your liver, all kinds of bad things can happen. So being mindful about stepping away from having to respond right away. We are not firefighters. Allowing time between calls, between how many people are asking how many things, between having to do the next task. Make sure that you go for your comfort breaks. It's not, hey, yay, I get a perk, I get to go to the bathroom, I'm going to take 2 minutes to go to the washroom. We need to take care of ourselves. Taking time to wait is also important for clients and staff to come from here down to here, to do some of their own critical thinking and apply some of their own skills. So my voicemail says, I will get back to you in 2 business days. Quite often things are resolved by then. If there is an emergency, I have checked the voicemails. I know what's going on. If there is an emergency, I will address that right away, but the other ones, sometimes they can wait. And relaxing your standards, including those at home. Okay, so the socks are still in the middle of the living room. Am I going to have a battle about this right now? I'm going to relax my standard on that tonight because I've had a hard day at the office. Spend time with family, the fun stuff. Be silly like the kitty. Regular meals. A lot of us are on the go. We're eating in the vehicle as we're driving between here and Timbuktu or Parry Sound and wherever it was I was last week. I'm not sure. Get exercise and fresh air, enough sleep. And that is the post-puppy play coma that happened after they were playing with Finnegan. That was way too cute. Now, the problem-solving skills are really, really important. Lots of stuff are coming up. There's always something to be addressed. A small problem that can be resolved early ends up becoming a massive problem where somebody actually quits at the end, rather than, let's do the steps. The first 2 things are just identifying and talking about them, but after that, we need to explore solutions. We need to try out something new, maybe. Then we need to evaluate, did that actually work? And then ask for help outside if that hasn't worked. Disclosures of thoughts of suicide. When people are feeling overwhelmed and they're giving you little tidbits of, I'm feeling overwhelmed, I can't do this anymore, I feel so worthless, this is just too much. Those are invitations to have a deeper discussion. There's a really quick, accessible course, and it's international, and it's called Safe Talk. So it's 4 hours. These are geared towards the layperson, and it is how to ask that hard question, because some of us cannot even wrap our mouth around the word suicide, let alone ask, are you having thoughts of suicide, to a client or a staff person or a friend. Healthy boundaries. So that was my second day at the office. I'm down on the floor in the executive director's office, kissing Tesla, the executive director's dog. Those kind of healthy boundaries, yeah, whatever. I'm going to cross those all the time. But with clients, absolutely not. We know that we cannot control what happens out there, but we can try and control our own reactions. And that takes exercise. So the vicarious trauma, compassion fatigue, and how to protect yourself pieces. We hear so many stories. I encourage you strongly, because in the last interview skills workshop that I just put on, only 2 organizations had a debriefing protocol. So no policies and procedures, people are not sure where to go to, and the encouragement that they need to talk about it because it does build up, and then bad things happen. Finding healthy avenues to lessen the stress on a regular basis. So compassion fatigue is an overexposure of stress. Changes in personality, such as a positive person is now withdrawn, short-tempered. Their inability to listen to people's problems anymore. They might not even be able to listen to the news or watch movies that have dramatic themes. The next step can be burnout or more serious psychiatric diagnoses. Training, as you're doing today, so this is just a brief little 45-minute snippet, is really essential for them self-identifying, but also how to better support our clients, and then staff supporting staff, and in their home. Their home environment can be a huge trigger for what's going on then in work. If their home environment isn't being addressed, then things can trickle through into work. While not having a formal policy of debriefing, options for people whom they can speak with. Asking always, is this a good time? I just had a really tough phone call or interaction. Are you okay if I talk with you right now? Versus the person that comes blasting into your office going, oh my God, you wouldn't believe what just happened on the phone. We call that a slime session because you're not prepared and you're full on hurricane. And then you have absorbed a little bit of that vicarious trauma as well. Another little cartoon. It could be the full moon that turns you into a werewolf, or it might just be a stress management issue. So some things to consider implementing in your organization: staff training on mental health and wellness, policy and procedure for debriefing, looking out for signs of mental health distress in clients or staff. Staff meetings need to have a wellness component. If you can begin or end every staff meeting, ideally ending with the successes, would be grand. Doing a little check-in with everybody at the beginning. How are you feeling? What's going on this week? Where is your thermometer? Because mental health is a sliding scale, from wellness to being very unwell. Partner with your local mental health organizations. They want to know about our work, totally. How can we have a symbiotic relationship of having a touch point person to refer people if you don't have an employee assistance program? How to make those connections, coming in with a few dogs into a mental health facility, making personal connections then with staff so that you have a liaison. So the international programs, and these truly are international, and I've heard, across Europe and, of course, Australia being strong with their mental health training. So mental health first aid, all of these are layperson. You're not going to come out as a trainer. You're going to come out with so many skills that are applied to every day, and you will view people and yourself in a different way. The safe talk, where it's just that beginning conversation with somebody identifying that they're having thoughts of suicide, and from there you get them connected to somebody, doing a referral yourself then to somebody who can take the next step. And quite often that can be an in-house person around applied suicide intervention skills training, and they will go through a safety plan with a person. These pieces are really important also for PTSD trainers, and I understand that this is going to be hopefully pushed through as a standard within ADI, that all trainers would be having this type of training so that they are better equipped to deal with our clients as well as supporting themselves. Any questions, my friends? So I'm moving to Europe next summer, but I will be bebopping back and forth between Canada and Europe. I do other trainings as well, so if you're wanting to stay in contact, please utilize that. We have a question in the back.
It's actually kind of a comment too, I guess. When you were speaking of talking with folks who may be feeling suicidal, or maybe you're just looking at someone you think is depressed. One of the things I have a question of is whether or not to put any labels on it, not to label them, but to even say, are you feeling depressed or anxiety? Are you feeling anxious? Mm-hmm. Or do you just open-ended type questions?
Yeah. So the open-ended questions, the only direct question, if you have concerns that there may be thoughts of suicide, you need to be very direct. And you are not going to plant an idea of suicide in their head. It's like, oh, hey, I haven't thought of that. You cannot push a person into suicide, but asking directly eases so much tension. And even if they're like, whoa, no, I'm not anywhere close to that, I'm just having a really bad stretch of time, a lot of things are going on, it's like, yay. And they will know that you are the safe person who isn't frightened of the biggest question out there. Anyone else? Put your hand back up. There we go. Thanks.
It was just an observation, really, of what you were saying about allowing people to talk. Certainly being from the UK, I don't know about anyone else, but it's very easy to close people down. Mm-hmm. They'll say they're having a bad day, so you'll say, oh, it'll be okay. Tomorrow's a better day, and you might miss that opportunity for them to say, actually, this isn't a good day, and it's not a good week. So by just, as you were saying, allowing people to talk and not making it better for them, you find out the truth of what's going on. But it's so easy, like you say, to feel that silence and say, it's okay.
Yeah. We're all busy, right? And we dismiss, or avoid situations because of our busyness. But to hold space is more powerful than 6 months of therapy for some people. At the right time, if you can be preemptive by going and saying, what, I'm noticing you're struggling today, and they'll say whatever they say, and do you want to go for a walk? Let's take the dogs out for a walk, or let's sit in my office. You have time for a cup of tea? And if they want to talk, they'll talk, and if not, they know that you've made that space for them, though, too. Well, thank you very much. We are on the home stretch. I'm going to see everyone out on the dance floor, right? I have business cards up here if you'd like to connect directly. nationalservicedogs.on.ca. I'm going to party with you tonight. You're fun. Okay, thank you very much, everyone. And I'm always appreciative of any feedback. That's how we grow.